When you think about a massive construction project, you probably imagine cranes, steel beams, maybe a lot of concrete, right? But what if I told you the most critical decisions, the ones that make or break the entire thing, happen way before anyone even breaks ground? Yeah, it's all about the blueprint before the blueprint.
So how do you do it? I mean, really, how do you manage the thousands of people and millions of dollars it takes to bring these incredible structures to life without everything just falling into total chaos? The scale of it all can feel, well, pretty staggering.
You know, the secret isn't in a toolbox, it's in the boardroom. It really all boils down to two fundamental choices you make at the very beginning. And these choices, they set the course for the entire project.
So here's our game plan for the next few minutes. We're going to start with those foundational choices. Then we'll dive into how you pick the right team structure and, write the rules of the game. After that, we'll follow the money, and finally, we'll tackle the big one, how to actually prepare for and manage risk. Okay, first up, those foundational choices. I want you to think of these as two massive pillars. They have to be set perfectly, otherwise the whole structure is at risk of crumbling.
The first pillar is something called the project delivery method. Now, this isn't just your average project plan, nope. It's a huge strategic decision that legally defines the entire relationship between the owner, the designer, and the contractor. It's the how of your team's collaboration, and it's all locked into a contract.
And that second pillar? Well, that's the contract itself. If the delivery method is the relationship, then the contract is the legally binding rulebook for that relationship. It spells out exactly who does what, when they do it, and how they do it.
So, with those two pillars in mind, let's zoom in on that first one. We know what a delivery method is in theory, but how do you actually choose the right one in the real world? Well, it all starts with getting really honest about your project's vitals. What's your actual budget? Is the design completely locked in, or is it still kind of evolving? How much risk are you truly willing to take on? What's the real deadline? And, this is a big one, how experienced is your own team? Getting these answers right is absolutely half the battle.
The good news is, you don't have to just rely on a gut feeling here. To make this process more of a science, the Construction Industry Institute, or CII, developed a pretty powerful tool. It's designed to take all those priorities we just talked about and turn them into a clear, data-driven decision.
It's called the Project Delivery and Contract Strategy Tool. Yeah, PDCS for short. And the process is a really straightforward 4-step analysis. You figure out your key factors, you give them weights based on what's most important to you, and then you let the tool crunch the numbers. What it spits out are scores, giving you a really solid quantitative basis to make your final call. It's all about replacing guesswork with data.
Okay, so you've chosen your delivery method. Your team structure is set. Now it's time to build out that second pillar, the contract. This is where you write the official rules of engagement for everybody involved. Luckily, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. The industry relies heavily on what are called Standard Forms of Contract, or SFOCs. Think of them like battle-tested templates, They've been refined over decades to be super efficient and to cover all the predictable bumps you might hit along the road. Now, this brings you to a critical fork in the road. Do you use one of those standard forms, or do you write a completely custom, bespoke contract from scratch? And here's the classic trade-off, right? On one hand, the standard form gives you efficiency and legal clarity, but it can be a little rigid. On the other hand, the bespoke contract offers total flexibility for really unique projects, but that freedom comes with a much bigger price tag in legal risk and complexity. All right, let's dig even deeper into the contract itself. We need to get into the mechanics. Specifically, how is money going to change hands, and how was the team even chosen in the first place? This is all laid out in the payment and award methods.
Here is basically the menu of options, and believe me, the choices you make here are critical. For payments, you could go with a lump sum, which is just a fixed price. It's simple, but it's risky if the scope changes. Or you might pick cost plus, where the owner pays for all the costs plus a fee. That gives you more flexibility, but way less cost certainty. And for picking the winner, you've got the classic competitive bid, where the lowest price wins. But for more complex jobs, you might use a best value selection, which looks at qualifications and approach, not just the bottom line. Each one of these creates a totally different set of incentives and risks for everyone.
And all of these choices lead us right to our final and maybe the most important section, navigating risk. Because let's be honest, no project ever goes exactly as planned. The goal isn't to somehow avoid all challenges. That's impossible. It's to anticipate them and prepare for them inside the contract itself.
So what are we really talking about when we say contract risk?
I love this quote from Francis Hartman because it just cuts through all the noise. At the end of the day, all risk really just boils down to two simple fears. Is the job going to get done right? That's performance risk. And is it going to cost more than we budgeted? That's cost risk. Simple as that.
A really common strategy for managing this, and one that can get pretty contentious, is risk shifting. Owners will use very specific language in the contract, they're known as disclaimer clauses, to legally pass certain risks onto the contractor or the designer.
And when you look at thousands and thousands of contracts, you start to see the same patterns pop up again and again. In fact, research shows there are five major disclaimer clauses that appear time and time again.
And here they are. These clauses, they deal with all the big what-ifs. What if we find unexpected rock when we start digging? What if there are delays? Who pays the legal bills if something goes wrong? What are the penalties for finishing late? Understanding these 5 clauses is like having X-ray vision into the contract. You can see exactly where all the risk has been placed.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway in all this? It's that successful projects are never an accident. They are the direct result of the kind of deliberate, strategic choices we've been talking about. Choices made in that planning stage, long before the first piece of equipment ever shows up on site.
Which leaves us with one final thought. Every major project has a ridiculously detailed blueprint for the physical building. But is the blueprint for how your team will work together, communicate, and handle risk, is that blueprint designed with the same level of care and intention? Because at the end of the day, that's the foundation that everything else is built on.